Thank you very much. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's a huge honor to be here just exactly 2 months after that we established together the International Network for Immigration Research in Budapest. And I just mentioned to Jim Robb before we start the event that the big achievement is not to establish something, but to continue to sustain it and do meaningful things. And I'm really happy that it seems that we managed to be on the track. We arranged that I will speak for you today about the new EU Migration and Asylum Pact, its consequences, and the Hungarian perspective. I will tell a couple of words about the current migration crisis in Europe, because we are now currently the other shore of the Atlantic, and perhaps you are not reading daily the news about what's going on in the territory of the EU. Well, even if the peak was in 2015 and 16, we could see a huge pressure on the EU external borders. Last year, more than almost 400,000 irregular border crossings happened all around of Europe, and these were which were just detected, because if you check the numbers of asylum application, more than 1 million people applied for it. So it means that likely hundreds of thousands of people managed to leak on the borders without any detection, even if we know that some of the people arrived legally and after overstayed or applied for asylum with a legal stay. And it's important that these numbers exclude Ukrainian and other third country refugees who arrived from Ukraine in the last 1.5, slowly 2 years. So we can state definitely similarly to the United States that the whole system is overburdened and actually dysfunctional since 2015. The basic problems are the sea borders. It's very interesting to see that it's much easier to protect the land border with physical barriers and legal barriers and political will than to defend a sea border. It's a huge problem in the soft underbelly of Europe. You can see in the Italian perspective and the Greece perspective. The other problem is the instrumentalization of migration by certain actors in the last year, which it's more and more frequent to make pressure of the EU for different political and geopolitical reasons. But it's also true that we are lacking in many cases the political will to stop irregular migration, and we are sending, I mean the EU and some capitals, very mixed messages, ladies and gentlemen, because it's not possible to speak about effective border protection while in the meantime we are speaking about quota system for asylum application, which is an open gate for people who are coming. And it's evident that the whole EU asylum system was, and unfortunately even with the new asylum deal, will have inadequate framework to stop the flow of people. And in general, we can state that the new EU Pact on Migration Asylum offers limited solution for the problems of the past, while keeping a lot of bad practices. First of all, it's very important to underline the practical and philosophical and conceptual problems with the whole asylum system. We have still the false premise that everybody is entitled to some kind of international protection, and we are allowing asylum seekers into the territory of the European Union. And after it, it's almost impossible to deport them, even if majority doesn't have any legal background to get international protection. It's a huge challenge in both shores of the Atlantic. If I try to go and try to come to the United States, the border protection of the United States starts in this legal framework in the Budapest Liszt-Ferenc International Airport, because before I managed to get my border card, the staff checking whether I have the legal visa to arrive to the United States. Why we are letting people just telling that, okay, I need asylum into our territories. So, and this practice is destroying and overburden the whole system. Another big philosophical and conceptual problem is that instead of a very clear legal and practical consideration, we are using normative and moralizing discourse about this whole case. There are bad actors and good actors. people who are very cruel and states which are very brutal and cruel, who try to stop these poor asylum seekers, like Hungary, and sometimes the United States, while there are humane actors who try to open the borders for these very vulnerable people. While we are following this discourse and narrative and language, it's very hard to speak in an academic framework about this phenomenon. Not to mention that the right of asylum seeker eclipses all others. I mean, national sovereignty, the rights of the citizens of host countries, security considerations, etc., etc. So it's not easy to maintain the system anymore among these circumstances. And if anybody's speaking about, for example, the security considerations, the sovereignty consideration of the host nations, it's very easy. He gets, you know, the name of anti-something, that securitizing the problem, etc., etc. So there is a very strong discrediting narration about the whole story. What about the practical consideration and the problem of with the new pact and the older system? It's very important that actually the safe third country concept is still meaningless in the new EU pact. It's very far from the original spirit of the Geneva Convention. Mark, I think, will tell a couple of words about this, because if we go back, the whole establishment of the global refugee system, perhaps the main condition was an imminent and immediate threat on the life of the asylum applicants. But we find now, for example, in the EU legislation, there are terms which are very, very far from the general spirit of the Geneva Convention. I collected a couple of terms about this. One is that currently, according to the law, there is a necessity connection between the asylum seeker and the country in which he transferred, which means, for example, and there is the text of the law, applicant's family are present in that country or where the applicant is settled or stay in that country. So, for example, somebody leaving Afghanistan across Iran and he doesn't have a family there, and then it's not a safe third country for them, according to the law, because he doesn't have a connection with Iran. Even if there's no persecution, no any threat on their life, it's not a safe third country for him or her. Another very important issue that the safe third country has to maintain an adequate standard of living, should be understood as including access to food, clothing, housing, or shelter. Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, if you look around the world, how many countries still lacking access to the basic and elementary education for their own citizens? So the current legislation exclude dozens, if not more than 100 countries as a safe third country. And the country should, again, the safe third country should provide an adequate standard of living, emergency health care, and, as I mentioned, basic education for the applicant. If it doesn't exist, then it's not a safe third country. So we are very close in the current system that it works as a welfare program more than a protection for people who are in imminent threat. There are ideas that the EU would like to process asylum application outside the EU territory. But the new framework is not good for this. Why? The authorities get 7 days, ladies and gentlemen, to judge whether the applicant more or less has a chance to be eligible for a real asylum or any kind of international protection. If anybody who's working in the system knows exactly that 7 days is not enough, even, you know, the translator in some cases will not arrive within 7 days to judge whether these guys are eligible for any protection or not. I mentioned the problem of sea borders. It sounds very well that we are processing asylum seekers outside the EU territory. But what happened if they arrive to the shores of Italy? Last year, more than 150,000 people. We can bring back to Libya, so they are already in. And last but not least, the regulation also contains that the most vulnerable people must immediately let in. I mean minors, members of family units, and surprise, surprise, a big chunk of the people who arrive and seems that somehow young, they confessed, oh no, I'm below 18 years old, and we are family members. On the other side of the story, with definitely a lot of fake families. And last but not least, about the compulsory solidarity, what I mentioned you. The EU had its brilliant idea 6 or more than 7 years ago as a compulsory quota system, that each member states had to accept a certain number of asylum seekers. The system didn't work, even among the member states who thought, okay, we are ready to take the asylum seekers. Now there's a new system with not compulsory quota system, but compulsory solidarity, which means that the quota system is still there, but if you don't want to take asylum applicants, then you can pay 20,000 euro per person. So it's a huge burden on each member state. I mentioned that repatriation and deportation in the whole system, actually it's the Achilles heel of the whole system. Effectiveness is below 20%. And even if we see that there are some efforts to enhance the collaboration with third countries to receive back their citizens, actually there's no any guarantee in the system that we can enforce it. And the different attempts to increase or establish collaboration with certain countries, Albania, Tunisia, or not an EU country, but the UK with Rwanda, actually all failed in the different legal battles and by the attempts and by the attacks of different pro-immigrant groups. And last but not least, again, border protection is underlined in the whole new migration pact, but actually still today it's not allowed that from the common EU budget to get fund for physical barriers. Drones are very important part of any border protection, but just simply a drone will not stop anybody to cross the border. Very briefly about the Hungarian perspective, we are in the crossroad and surrounded by EU member states and stable countries. This is why I raised the issue of safe third country. You can see Romania, Serbia, Croatia as an EU member. There's no civil wars, no persecutions there. Still, finally, even if Hungary judged that these are safe third countries, anybody who arrived across these countries will be sent back to Serbia or Romania because there's no persecution. Romania is also an EU member state. No, it was rejected by the Court of Justice of the European Union, and now Hungary got a huge penalty because according to current legislation, it is unlawful because of certain reason. This is why I telling that the whole system is on the collapse and doesn't work. And what is supported now by the new legislation is actually the practice of asylum shopping. We are letting asylum seekers to decide where they would like to go. Why? And last but not least, Hungary and the countries always blame that we are not ready to accept anybody who need asylum. No, it's definitely not true. If you follow the news, Hungary opened its border for Ukrainian refugees, but because of a very simple reason, we are the first neighboring countries. Ukrainian refugees didn't cross half a dozen of different countries, including EU member countries with perfectly or more or less perfectly working asylum system. No, they arrived to the safe third countries, which was Hungary was the first of one. And more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees arrived to Hungary, even if most of them later moved towards to other EU countries. So actually, my concluding remarks are that no, the new asylum pact will not solve our problems. It provides very little solution by keeping bad practices, and we are still very far from the original spirit of the Geneva Convention, and the current asylum system, international asylum system, works much more as a welfare program than a real initiative which can protect people in danger. Thank you very much.